All right, so I'm here round 2 with my man Ethan Nelson,
Yes, sir. Stoked.
brother in Dharma, and we're about to riff on some crazy shit. And last time it was pretty fast, there was a lot of energy, and we're gonna slow down and really go deep and take our time into these profound, in my opinion, life-changing subjects. So specifically 2 things. The first would be what are called jhanas. So these are deep states of meditative absorption is how they're described. And they profoundly change the human experience. When you can access deep states of bliss, peace, formlessness, simply by calming the mind. So we're going to get into jhanas. And then we're going to get into the topic of soul making. So that's an interesting term, soul making. What does that mean? So there's a recognition, basically, that soul isn't something that we just have. It's actually something that we co-create. And there are certain practices that we can engage in, certain ways of seeing self, world, and experience as a whole that induce more experiences of deep meaningfulness, connection, divinity, profundity, transcendence, all of it can be sort of hacked through understanding the impact of ways of seeing. The way that we choose to see experience has a profound impact on what we experience. So, Ethan, I'm going to hand it off to you. Which one do you want to hit first?
Let's do jhanas. Let's do jhanas.
I think that actually goes well into soul making afterwards.
Yeah. I have a couple soul making metaphors, but I'll hold them all. So,
Yeah.
So jhanas. So I think starting with jhanas, let's just give people a sense that this is possible, right? I think when we're starting out, we have all these kind of like limiting conceptions of like, I can't really get samadhi. That's only for the crazy Buddhists in the cave or something.
And what is samadhi?
Samadhi is essentially is a state that you get in when you're in jhanas. It is a deep, profound well-being that is all pervasive. It's just like you're just sitting there doing nothing and you just feel absolutely good.
Yeah.
You just feel like nothing is wrong in the world, and it's just happiness. It's fundamentally happiness.
Well, that's I would say like the first 2 jhanas. There are 8 jhanas, which we'll get into.
Right.
But basically what happens is your mind calms down and it slows down.
There you go.
And actually the push and pull with life gets reduced. And actually it's the push and pull that is, in the Buddhist terms, fabricating experience, senses of solidity, senses of even reality. So what happens when we just calm down the mind dramatically and slow down the push and pull is we enter into deep, profound states of somatic bliss. This is not a conceptual experience. Right. Actually, the mind completely fades in the second jhanas because, again, there are 8 phases that have been tracked. This is not even just a Buddhist thing. This has been kind of documented in various traditions. I didn't know that. It's pre-Buddha, actually. It's Vedic. At least that's where I know it from. I've heard it's also in like mystical Christianity as well. But I don't know too much about that.
Of course, it's cross religion. It's like we're all human. We all have access to this.
That's the thing. It's not a belief. It's not a belief. It's just what happens when you really sink into stillness. It's what's here. What everyone experiences. It's not trapped by any belief system. Again, that's the profundity of it. You don't have to believe in it. Yeah. You see it with your own eyes, and not just see it. It's not just, we're like doing an affirmation and like changing the world from the inside out. There's a place for that. This is a somatic experience of bliss in the second jhana. So maybe we should actually just explain the jhanas, the map of the jhanas. So
okay. And before we explain what each jhana is, I want to kind of like lay some more context and foundation. Please. So a lot of people, when they first learn jhana, a lot of times it's described as like one pointedness or like sharp concentration, where you're just kind of like absorbed into something. But it's kind of framed in this way of like you're just like forcing a degree of one pointed attention. But actually, as I've found in my experience, that doesn't work. I've tried that. Maybe you get some piti, as we'll explain, some like really pleasurable sensations. But ultimately, jhana is like, rather than thinking of it as like one pointed absorbed concentration, it's more like a unified, all pervasive concentration, where it's like you're concentrated, but you're not concentrated on one object. You're kind of concentrated on on just like a unification of the whole being. And when you do that, then your being stops contracting and you kind of get absorbed and you start feeling degrees of positive sensations in the body. And with that attention, that's kind of like, it's more of like a receiving rather than a penetrating.
Exactly.
And you're kind of like receiving that positive, and then it just expands and gets more and more subtle, like as we'll talk about.
In my experience, it's almost like you're tuning your antenna to a certain frequency of reality where there is just peace universally, or bliss, or formlessness. And we'll get into all that. But I think that's a beautiful thing to add, that this is not like concentrating really hard coding or like writing or anything like that. It's more like, the way I phrase it, it's the same kind of awareness you have when you're juggling. Like, you're not really looking at the balls like as independent things.
Right.
You have a very broad gaze. And so in order to get into jhanas, and actually I was just sinking into like first, second jhana hearing you speak, because I was like, I wonder if I can get into it. And I was like, yep, we can. It's a very broad awareness. And it's actually this interesting process of attempting, like, you have to try to get into the jhanas to sink into some degree of concentration, but also you have to let go. It's this really interesting kind of middle way experience. If you just try to bang your head against a wall to get into these deep states of meditation, absorption, you will not be able to do it. It's this, again, this balancing act of the perfect mixture of really attempting to get there and also letting go.
And I think that's why the attitude of play is so important here, because it's in some ways it is a formula. Like, there are 8 jhanas, but in other ways, if you treat it too much like a formula, you're going to be imposing too much constriction onto your experience that it just won't work.
As the Buddha said when somebody asked him how you meditate, he said, similarly to tuning your guitar or lute or whatever kind of stringed instrument they had in 2,000 years ago, if you pull the string too tight, it snaps. If you don't pull it tight enough, it doesn't make a sound. That middle way, that's how you meditate, with the right amount of intention and effort, but not too much.
Yeah. And I want to give everyone like a sense of what jhana is, a felt sense. Yeah. Right? So the closest I can get to describing it is like, how do you feel when you're grateful? Like, if you're doing a gratitude practice, you're like writing all the things you're grateful for, and there's just kind of like a positive feeling. Now imagine that times 100 and just pure relaxed into it with your whole being for sustained amounts of time. Yep. And then that's jhana.
So, and again, so these states can be accessed through very simple meditation. So basically samatha. So samatha is basically translated as calm abiding. That's the goal of samatha meditation. And this calm abiding can be attained through, my favorite way is actually just following the breath. So simple, there's nothing to it. And actually just by kind of yoking awareness to the breath, the hyper simplicity of over and over again, the mind starts to just calm down. And the push and pull starts to be calmed as well. And then you enter into these unfabricated or less fabricated states of consciousness, because this is a whole core tenet of Buddhism. The world as we experience it is fabricated. It's built. It's constructed. It's not what we think it is normally. It's sort of a play of appearances. And we and our minds are actively constructing them, again, through this magic show of pushing and pulling, which is constructing solidity. So then when the mind becomes very still, we enter into these states. And so, again, I want to give people a map of at least, so the first 4 jhanas,
go for it,
which are the form jhanas, the rupa jhanas. That's the Pali word for it, for them. And the first jhana is characterized by, the Pali word is piti. So when you're in the first jhana, you can tell, because your whole body, again, this is not in your mind, this is a somatic experience, is sort of like vibrating with this like energy. It's the best way I can really describe it. You feel this like feeling, and I can feel it in my arms right now and in my legs, just like dropping into it. And it's interesting. It is rapturous in the sense of it takes your awareness. You're like, oh, whoa, there it is. And this is something that we, and I will say with confidence, cannot tap into in normative consciousness. only when the mind is very still can we drop into this. So this is a very different sensation, very unique. And so the rapture of the first jhana, of your whole body kind of buzzing, is like, whoa. And it does sort of feel good. It can sort of feel like, I don't know, does this feel good? It's just raw sensation almost.
It's somewhat
buzzing.
Uncomfortable in my experience, where it's like it feels really good, but there's also some degree of just like, it's almost like too good in a way that like creates uncomfortableness around it. That's kind of been my experience with it, where it's definitely pleasurable, but the suffering hasn't fully been surrendered out of the experience altogether.
Well, it's pleasant and it's rapturous. That's what people say. It's defined by rapture, the first jhana. So again, your whole awareness is taken. You're like, whoa, what is that? And it's piti. That's the Pali word for it. So it's just sensation all over the body. And again, it feels inherently good, but you stay with that. And when I was first learning this and practicing it, when you feel it, it's so cool and pleasant. The being almost unconsciously clings to it.
Yeah.
And once it clings, it fades.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
So you almost blip into the first jhana and then you blip out, because you can only get into the jhana by some degree of letting go.
In something to add here as well, it's sort of an acquired taste. It's kind of like a fine wine or something.
The first jhana.
Yeah, it's like the first time you get into it, it's like, I don't know about this. This is like so far out of my normal everyday consciousness. It's kind of jarring. But the more you sit with it, the more it's like, no, this is actually really nice. Dude, this is actually really nice.
Interesting. I always fucked with the first jhana.
Okay. So we had different experiences.
I fucked with it so hard that I always clung to it, and it always faded until... And again, so the way that you get into the second jhana, and again, there are 8. The first 4 are called the form jhanas. Just to lay out the map, the second 4 are called the formless. That's when the experience of a physical body, like having a boundary between you and the world, actually fades. So you enter into formless states of consciousness. So the second jhana, after the first jhana, which is again characterized by this piti, by this sensation, when you can actually just let go into that piti, into the first jhana, very deeply and relax into it. And again, this sort of perfect balancing act of effort, but also letting go. You sink deeper. And that piti, that same sensation you feel universally throughout your body, in a sense, it sort of gets refined. And I like what our favorite teacher, Robert Bea, says about this process, where it's almost like you're sifting sand. And the grittiness of the first jhana, of that raw rapture, gets more refined into something that actually feels much more pleasant. And what they call this in Pali is sukha. So this is a word for bliss. So if you know anything about Buddhism, you know the word dukkha. This is a word that means suffering. Dukkha is suffering. So sukha is actually bliss, the opposite of that. So in the second jhana, the piti gets transformed into this universal bliss. And I want to say this is something that is dramatically different than anything that you can taste in normative consciousness. Anything. It doesn't matter the money, the experience. It doesn't matter where you're at. Nothing can touch this. Your whole body is glowing with a stable bliss. And again, the stability comes with practice. But
it's better than alcohol. It's better than... Dude, almost any type of dopamine you can get from the external world. It's
like the words will never do it justice. And I just want to get people watching stoked. Because if you're hearing this and something in you is like, oh, that sounds interesting, good. Because this will change your life. And I do not say that lightly. There's something about being able to access the deepest bliss you can taste as a conscious being through just sitting. What happens to your pursuit of sense pleasures? What happens to the sense that I don't have enough? If only I had the money. If only I had the wife. If only I had the power. If only people liked me. All of that fades because you can sit and get the most pleasant sensation available. And I'm saying it's not even comparable to anything else you can get in normative consciousness. And so, again, I just want to get people stoked to look into this.
It's just like, imagine what your life could be, essentially. All right, let's say you have like a really shitty day at work and you're stressed out and you're dealing with all these, clients or whatever. You get home from that. what's your normal reaction? You have aversion to it, you're trying to run away. What if you could just stabilize your psyche where it's like, that was kind of a jarring day. Let me go sit on the couch, rest in first or second jhana, and kind of just like recharge. That's like, it's like restful, right? Like we were like, oh, I'm going to go like watch Netflix. Like you're not resting when you're doing that. No. If you're in jhana, your body is like literally recharging itself in real time, and then you get out of that and you're like, oh, I'm so stoked to like, go do stuff in the world now.
And that's exactly it. It really does feel like it is shifting you on the cellular level. And this sounds like some like maybe like woo new age shit. Touch into these states and tell me what you think.
It's not woo-woo at all. It's like, I mean, we could use the word cellular, or we could use the word conditioning. Exactly. Like we are conditioned in many ways, scientifically speaking, and we can recondition those felt patterns in our experience to just default to greater degrees of well-being.
Exactly. So it's innately healing to deep parts of the psyche. The Buddha used poetic metaphors describing these jhanas. And he says the first jhana is kind of like you're wandering through the desert and you see an oasis in the distance and you're like, oh, yes, that's the rapture. And then you get to the oasis and you start drinking the water and you're, again, just parched. Our beings are like emaciated from joy and bliss.
Yep.
So universally that we just think it's normal because we've been conditioned into certain states of consciousness. And it's honestly just obvious. I'm like, that sounds kind of conspiracy-esque, but who knows? Is it malicious? Is it not? Is it intentional? We have been conditioned in a way that separates us from drinking in the bliss of existence. Bliss for no reason. Just it's our God-given inheritance, this bliss.
And some people this is one of the objections I had going into it. Am I just going to be like, just chilling in the jhanas all day at no desire, no ambition whatsoever? I think it's the opposite. It's like, what kills my ambition? Like stress, burnout, fear. What does this do? It counteracts stress, fear, burnout. It makes me feel alive again. Yeah. It makes me feel stoked to go out in the world and participate.
So again, this bliss that we can taste in the second jhana, again, just simply through calming the mind. I love what Rob said in one of his talks on the jhanas. He's like, if people could pay for that state, what do you think they would pay? And just if you've touched into that bliss, again, on demand, simply by sitting and having dexterity of mind to be able to let go of the push and pull, you can enter radically deep states of bliss. So what would people pay for that? The billionaires with everything materially speaking do not have access to this level of bliss, this profundity of bliss. And again, this whole podcast, this conversation, the goal is to illuminate that this is possible for anybody. I've been meditating daily for like 5-6 years, and I can touch into the second jhana pretty consistently. I would say most sessions where my intention is jhana, I can touch into the second jhana. So that touch into it and stabilize it for, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes at a time. And it's like, this is like when you sink into that, it's like, the whole being can relax. You're like, there it is. It really is. That metaphor from the Buddha is so apt of getting to this oasis and your whole being is dying of thirst and you just start drinking this bliss and it tastes so good. And just following that metaphor, maybe we can go into the third jhana. So the third jhana is one that I will say I've been able to blip into, and it is dramatically different than the second. I haven't been able to stabilize my experience of the third jhana. But what happens, again, so it's like, again, sifting sand, where the sukha, the bliss, becomes even more refined, even finer in a sense. And the bliss fades. And you hit this point of like profound stillness and peace. And this is where Rob says, and this is really my experience as well, you feel like you've entered a different realm. Like you've tuned the being to a degree of consciousness that is profoundly different. Anything that you hear, anything that you see, because I meditate with the eyes open, is kind of characterized with this profound, almost like heavenly flavor. Like even just the dust in my room as I'm meditating, I'm like, whoa, like perfect. And again, so what would somebody pay for that? When you can, again, recharge your whole being by sitting. And so following the Buddha's metaphor, it's like, again, so first jhana, you see an oasis in the distance, you're dying of dehydration. Pretty dope. You get to the oasis and you drink. And basically, he says you drink your fill. And once you've drank your fill, you actually just get into the lagoon. And you completely get submerged in this peace. This bliss transforms into peace, which is actually more refined. And this state, again, when I can have those meditation sessions where I get into jhanas well, and one of those was actually 2 or 3 days ago where I was like, whoa, this is one of the best sessions I've ever had in my life. I'm like having deep jhana, profound images in the mind. Playing with images is another meditation that I do. And
we'll talk about it shortly.
We will talk about it shortly. It corresponds with soulmaking. But, dude, it's a treasure. It's a treasure. And I don't see people talking about it, even in Dharma communities. Going to the Boulder Zen Center here, I don't even hear people talk about it. I talked to the Roshi about, like, so what about, like, I'm usually getting into jhana. He's like, oh, yeah, jhana, yeah. I'm like, do you know what I'm talking about? Because jhanas are insane. They're insane. If you've actually touched into that, it's like no amount of mushrooms, no DMT, no LSD, no cocaine, no benzos can get anywhere close to this bliss.
So I want to talk about something to take a step back a little bit. Something I've been sitting with lately is you can go really deep into meditation and insight and just kind of like chase truth in a way that has no heart whatsoever, right? And so, like, you can do Zen, right? And I don't think this is true 100% of the time, but you can do Zazen and stare at the wall and do nothing. You can feel pretty peaceful and you can have deep insights into the nature of reality and still have a closed heart, right? And so one of the things I've been playing with is these jhanas are deeply pleasurable, and they're very similar in to an experience of loving kindness, to compassion, to metta. Yeah. And so they're kind of like in the same territory. So what you can do is you can kind of use one to get the other. Yeah. Maybe you can start with metta, which is may I be happy, may I be at peace, right, may I be safe. And you're feeling a lot of just like goodwill towards yourself and towards others. And then that kind of like positive experience of giving yourself love and giving others love can kind of lead into the jhanas. And then vice versa, you get in the jhanas and it has a quality of like, I just like feel love for all beings and for myself. And there's a way in which you sit in that more and more. And there's just like a love that you start to embody that I think sometimes you can miss if you're only going for the insight and for sitting and doing nothing and not necessarily accessing the feel-good qualities.
And that's the thing with jhana meditation is actually the best way to get into jhana is to find the way to feel the best, to feel really deeply happy. And happy not in the sense of, again, like it's not like a high, but feel good. The happiness, the feeling of goodness actually leads into jhana. So, and correspondingly, the jhanas lead you to feeling good. So it's this interesting feedback loop. And like you said, metta, loving kindness practice, and experientially in meditation, this is, there's many different kinds of metta actually. The one that I do is really simple. It's just saying these sort of mantras, these phrases. So, may I be kind to myself and others. May I be whole just as I am. And may I be loved. And I say this for myself over and over and over. And then I find a person to direct that metta towards. And then I find a group of people or all beings. And I say, may all beings be kind to themselves and others. May all beings be whole just as they are. And may all beings be loved. And I can like feel the jhana coming on saying that. And there's something really profound there. The mechanism going on is that love, that kind of openness, expansion, fabricates less experience, leads us into unfabricated or less fabricated states of consciousness, which is what the jhanas are. Again, the jhanas are these states of consciousness we are tuning to. And they're always here when the mind is not clinging and pushing away, because those are the actions that construct experiences of solid, real, reified reality. So again, interestingly, love not only fabricates less we'll just say fabricates less, but also in the jhanas, when consciousness is fabricating less, what opens up? Love, bliss, peace.
So this is really interesting because it fabricates less. Why does it do that? It has less clinging. It's like I feel good intentions, goodwill towards others in a way that's not asking something from them. And there's something Berbea talks about, which is it's a Buddhist thing where like deep sukha or deep love, that kind of like, I think he calls it like near enemy, is kind of like attached love. Right. So it's like a love that asks something in return. And so one of the cool things that I've been playing with is jhana and metta are kind of like training the consciousness to learn how to love without needing something in return. And we all know how much that kind of destroys relationships when there's that deep, like, I love you conditionally insofar as you can give me something that I need, you know?
And this is a beautiful conversation because I love to talk about love. And what you're speaking to is what I would call agape, that universal love. And I've heard this Tibetan saying, which is that the highest form of love is love with no object. So the second I say I love that, insert object here, I've actually defined my love. And the boundlessness of love has now been actually limited. So again, the highest form of love is love with no object, that sort of agape love, which I kind of view as like Christ consciousness. It's like the light of the sun, where anything it hits is bathed in love, any emotion, any person, any experience. Go on.
I want to add, like, I have a sense you can have both, right? Where it's like the universal love is kind of like drinking from the wellspring. It's like I'm just feeling deep senses of wholeness because I have access to this love for all things, including all experiences that I'm having. And then it's like, okay, maybe I love this person or this thing, but I don't need anything from them because, you know, I can just step back and rest in that universal love and just kind of be like recharged by it. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I love this because it makes me, because I'm receiving love from it. It's like, I love this. And when I'm not receiving love from this thing, let me just rest back in the universality of it.
And like you said, we can have both. And there is beauty to the agapic love that, again, Christ consciousness, universal love of the sun, where anything it hits, anything it shines on is bathed in love. And then there's a necessity, I would say, to eros, so eros is, we could summarize it briefly as that desire for more connection, to merge with another, not just another being. Obviously, eros gets used in the sexual context often, but the eros to merge with an image of myself. Who do I want to be? An image of the world. What world do I want to enter? What world do I want to construct? So eros actually, interestingly, requires two-ness, where a lot of spiritual circles talk about we want to fade into the transcendent, non-dual oneness of reality. And yes, we do. But there's a beauty and a necessity in two-ness, because I cannot have eros, the electrical charge to desire to merge with another, without two-ness. I need to feel separate, actually, to want to merge with somebody. If we just experience, oh, we're all one all the time, there's no space for the eros. And I like, it's like an electrical charge to flow. And so there's a necessity to that. And with eros, there is conditions. I love you if you love me. That's a condition, right? The agapic love is I love you regardless. You don't have to love me back. You can crucify me.
Can you have eros with two people that just feel deeply whole, or does eros imply like a conditionality?
Eros, and this is what Rob teaches. Well, I was gonna say eros actually requires some degree of dukkha, again, suffering. Interwoven in eros is dukkha, because the sense of longing for another to merge with. There cannot be eros if there is not longing. Again, because we can let down the longing. But then the eros fades.
Does this relate with the difference between like clinging and like healthy desire? Or what is the difference between holding desire in a way that's actually generative versus a clinginess? Where is that line? Where's that distinction?
Yeah, bro. We were talking about this at the sauna the other day, actually trying to kind of just suss out what the difference is between clinging, which according to traditional Buddhist Dharma is the root of suffering, and eros, which is also desire. Clinging and eros are two faces of desire. They are different though. Eros, for me experientially, there's a flavor of inspiration and almost like poetry and theater actually, where there's a richness of soul. And we're going to get into what I mean by soul in particular, but there's a depth. There's a poetry, there's a nourishment, even next to and alongside the suffering, the longing, where clinging is, it seems to be coming from a place of lack, of inherent insecurity and smallness, where it's like I'm clinging to something because I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like I need this or else. And there's something about clinging that actually feels inherently insecure and small, where Eros can feel big. I can be in my power. I can be enchanted and really be living in a ensouled existence, an enchanted cosmos, an enchanted experience of self. I can view myself as angel and still have that Eros, that deep longing for deeper connection with God. Let's say that. I cannot, if I don't have that Eros to, I want to connect with you more deeply, then it fades. Then all of a sudden, I'm just good. And I enter it back into normative, materialistic, hellish worldview. So that's the thing. We can channel Eros in skillful ways.
You said something there, and I want to ask you something. Do you have a sense of Eros for your like life's mission? Yeah. Is there like an imaginal something that my life is moving towards, and it's almost like the life's purpose as an imaginal kind of erotic relationship?
Dude, I'm so glad you asked, bro, because I've never talked about this with anybody. But yes, obviously, look at the work that I'm doing. Look at the work that I'm about to really start engaging in once I launch this brand. Look at what we're talking about. It's insane. It's insane. And I say that with confidence because I don't hear people talking about it. And I'm like, it came to this point where it's like, if I don't see anyone talking about it, I'll be that person. I'll be that person. And there's a magic in that desire that I not only want, I need. I have a duty to bring this to the world. And it's not my choice. It was given to me. And I say that literally. And I'm not the only one with an enchanted view of duty for my life path. Anyone who feels a duty to their life path will have Eros. And what's interesting, again, Eros, that desire to become, to create, to put something into the world, that has this interesting effect of constructing soul, making soul, we could say, through creating certain images and fantasies of self, world, and the path that I'm walking. Ultimately, any view of self, world, and the path are going to be equally made up, equally fantasy, and simultaneously equally real. This is the crux of emptiness. All appearances are empty, no matter what. You cannot get to anything, any appearance, that is not empty, because it would be the unfabricated. And we can speak to that in a second. There's many interweaving threads right now. But recognizing that all views are empty, why not pick the one that is enchanting, that inspires me, that fills me with life force and a reason to be here? This is, again, the poetry of perception that it seems like we've forgotten about as human beings, that we have the pen right now to write the script that not just enchants the world I'm walking through every day, enchants the being I'm inhabiting every day through writing a different script, a different narrative, different system of conceptuality to live by, within, and through.
Yeah. I want to add some stuff here.
Please.
So how this lands is like the stories we tell create our experiences. And a lot of times we tell these stories of, I'm just in this 9 to 5 and I hate it and it sucks, and we're telling ourselves these stories. And I was trying to get the sense of like, okay, I'm trying to think of what would someone's objections be to what we're saying. And they're like, yeah, easy for you guys to say. You guys are like creating content and, whatever. And it's like, I'm just here trying to support a family in a 9 to 5 or something like that. It's like, I have a sense though, you can bring that imaginal realm into anything. Yep. I'm going into my cubicle every day. why am I doing this? Maybe there's like some deeper purpose I want to live out, and this is one stepping stone towards that. Or, you know, I have a love for my child, and this is what I'm doing to support them. So this being in a cubicle, you know, like I think there's different ways to fabricate our experience, even if externally maybe it's not the greatest. And I want to add in something that our boy Berbea has talked about. He says, like, anyone can write any story, right? The Buddha, he could have said, I was like my parents like constricted me so much, and you know they really traumatized me, and so I left, and then I joined a bunch of ascetics, and they just never understood me, man. They just never got me, and so I had to leave them too, and now I'm just sitting here under a tree, and it's like he could have framed his life experience in a very kind of like trauma informed victim lens. But no, he's like, I'm a spiritual warrior that is going to see through reality and sit under this tree until I understand it. Those are two stories that fit his experience perfectly, right?
And so exactly. So it's so funny that the story of the Buddha, the way he recites it, again, it's heroic. He left the kingdom to be an ascetic and almost starved himself to death, and walked this path for 6 years before he found complete and utter enlightenment, according to this myth.
Wait, that's it? 6 years?
Belief. 6 years, baby. So, I mean, let that be inspiring.
Yeah,
you know, the Buddha went from like life is existentially shitty, just like a kind of emo goth kind of framework, which I fuck with anyways. There's something to that. But to complete and utter enlightenment. But again, we have the choice. Do I want to pick a narrative of victimhood, or do I want to pick a narrative of I'm the hero of this story, and life doesn't have the power to make me suffer? Again, so it's like this notion of poverty, this notion of being a victim, this notion of lacking anything is rooted in a certain story. I can be broke, and I have been broke, but with a certain story, the world still can't touch me. I'm still good, and I mean deeply good, by being able to work with our subtle, and I will say basically predominantly unconscious stories that we are living within. The unconscious story of my life. The past isn't solid, and yet it has the ability to haunt us every day of our lives here in the present. And I love this quote where they say it's never too late to have a good childhood. It's never too late.
That's great. Because
we can actually change the past. And I say that literally. Because the past, as we experience it in this moment right now, is an imagined experience. Because show me it. Where's the past?
Fabricated by the mind.
Fabricated by the mind right now in the present.
As is the future, as is the present as well.
So we're getting into trippy deep territory where we can actually manipulate past and future here in the present by working with our images, our beliefs, our assumptions, our narrative of what happened in the past. Was my dad just a piece of shit, and you know he had to hit me, or nobody looked out for me, and this life is just a cruel, cold place? If you hold that belief about your past and your childhood, again, it is affecting you now, in the present. It is constructing who you are.
Yeah, and there's so many frames on any situation.
We could say infinite. Actually.
There's infinite, right? Everyone abandons me, or I have not yet learned the skill of how to love properly. Boom. Those both fit the same experience perfectly, right? And we can say that the past is entirely fabricated, and I forgot where I was going with that.
No, that's hilarious. Sometimes the thread gets cut, bro. Sometimes you're on a roll, and then it's like a little balloon just drifts off in the air. But I'll take the ball and run with it. So
go for it.
The past is fabricated. The future is fabricated. And I want to say again, any sense of past or future are going to be only what you make it. Only what you say that they are. Yeah. So again, we have the power to, again, choose really just narratives that disenfranchise us, that make us experience like I'm a loser, or this world sucks and I'm never going to be anything. And this is largely unconscious again. Right. This is where meditation is necessary to just slow down the mind to see what's going on.
Exactly.
And then you can start to dig up those shitty narratives. It's like weeding the garden of the mind. Get rid of those shitty, made up, unskillful narratives that are torturing us unconsciously, and start to plant a garden of beauty, of gratitude, of I'm enough, of I needed that to build resilience. I needed that as the wound that opened me up to soul. And what happens in your experience when you say, I needed that darkness, thank you, as opposed to why me? There's an opening your chest up and taking life as it is, as opposed to hunching over and having to guard from it. And this affects us here in the present. And also I want to talk about death, because the experience of death in our culture, it seems so universally, objectively real. No one really talks about it, but there's this universal experience in secular culture, which I will say is the dominant culture. Like real religion has faded out of the modern collective human mind. Now science seems like that religion. And science says we don't know. But because all that we are is these little egos, once the body dies, we're completely gone. And this is a subtle but almost universal experience that contracts the being into this deep, deep fear of what I would call groundlessness, not knowing, uncertainty. What happens when we leave this physical form? And because we actually avoid death at all costs, we put old folks in a home. In hospitals, it's like it's tough to be around people who are dying. That's due to our ingrained resistance to the death process. And so what happens when we resist death is two things that are really interesting, actually. First, when I push away death, what happens? I solidify it, because I cannot push something away that isn't real. By default, if I'm resisting something, it has to be real. So the harder we push against this thing called death, the more we not only solidify it, but the more we make ourselves suffer in the present moment in regards to it.
And so I don't think you can expect people to just drop the fear of death. And I think this is something you're saying. I want to like spin it into a different angle. You know, we're all afraid of death. You brought in the scientism, materialism, you know, frame, which again lacks soul. And so you could say, how do you get someone to overcome the fear of death? You don't tell them to just drop the fear of death. You give them a different way of seeing that releases the rejection of death, right? And so if we're all holding this frame that all we are cells and atoms, and when we die, we're going to go back into nothingness forever, and it's pure nihilism, of course I'm always going to have some fear of death. But if I change my way of seeing to be something like, you know, this is overly simplistic, but everything is made of mind. And when I go back, the mind will again create other forms that I will inhabit. That, like, I'm not that afraid of death anymore, because my consciousness is going to take a different form in some way.
So there's multiple ways of approaching the fear of death. One is actually, interestingly, and this relates also to trauma, is loving it to death. You love death to death. Love trauma to death, where when you can open to painful experience, and again, trauma and death are both imagined painful experiences, because they're not here. They're either quote unquote in the past or in the future. Neither of those places have I ever been. So they're fabricated. So we are actually being tortured by our own mind, creating a certain experience and then resisting it. So we can love death to death by completely accepting it fully. And once we do that, the solidity of this abstract concept called death fades. And we see it for what it is, which is a man-made concept. It can't touch you at that point. You're free. So that's one way. Another way is to work with the story. Because we can say, look at Earth. Nothing here just blips out of existence. When a tree dies, it rots. The fungus infests it, and it decomposes and enters into the earth. What if that was what the soul does, the being, the mind? It's a giving back. We came together to make this body. What does it feel like to view death as, I'm giving this back to, and I'm getting chills saying this, to what I really am, to what we really are beyond this contracted form. And another view we could take on death is that life in this 3D existence is inherently contracted. We're in these contracted, seemingly separate human forms. This is the hard part. Death could be viewed as the ultimate expansion, the ultimate openness. Death is the easy part. We got it somehow all reversed, where we're afraid of the easiest thing possible, which is utter complete expansion. This is the contracted state. This is the hard part. And it's like, what happens when we hold that view and practice with that? Drop that into meditation of, oh, death is the easy part. This is the hard part. Right. Drop that into meditation when the mind is very still, and the world shifts in the present, because your relationship to this thing that has been torturing us unconsciously, and that I will say is torturing a whole society, that has literalized death, that has made it into this flat, cold, scary thing due to a lack of familiarity with it, an inability to re-enchant death. And this is what Burbea talks about, and we'll get into soulmaking in a little bit, and this might be a good segue, this notion of re-enchantment, because we experience a world that, again, is fabricated, constructed in mind, that is one-dimensional, that the world is objectively like this. It's either science or, dogmatic Christianity, or atheism, or animism, or New Age spirituality. We have a one-dimensional take where we basically universally cling to one view, that the world is like this, it's not like that. So this one-dimensionality actually blocks off many different possibilities for creating and discovering worlds, senses of self, senses of future, senses of past.
It isolates us because we are saying, I want to get a ground under my feet, so I'm going to choose one way of seeing, and then fundamentally us versus them, trying to push away other groups is fundamentally, I am afraid that if I open up to this other group's way of seeing, the ground is going to fall out from under me. And if I can just let the ground fall out from under me and just exist in that state and construct and deconstruct at will, then it's like I'm not afraid of someone that's a different religion, or even at one point in my life I was so into like no self that like even atheism was kind of like it shook me a little bit. And so it's like, even atheism as well, open up to that, open up to everything. It's like, oh, wow. And there's a compassion in it too, where it's like you speak with someone that's deeply nihilistic and atheist, and then it's like, ah, man, like I'm sorry you're living in so much fear, and like not like I'm sorry in like a better way, but it's like, damn, I feel a lot of empathy for that now. I'm not gonna say you're wrong. You gotta take this conscious soul-making perspective because this is the superior one. It's just like oh wow, it feels really good to move between worlds and to create them. And if someone doesn't have this, well, then it's like that's cool too,
And it's like yes, I really do believe, and I agree with you, that there are no sort of worlds that are objectively better than any other, right? They're all equally fabricated. They all actually have pros and cons, and in a very deep way, creation wants to taste some struggle. It wants to taste some darkness, some confusion, because if we don't inhabit the Buddhist word would be diluted states of consciousness, there's certain experiences that we will never have access to as pure consciousness. So it's almost like we need to get deeply lost in order to access certain flavors of the artistic nature of experience. So again, ultimately there's no right or wrong, but I will also say simultaneously, soulmaking and emptiness is, in my experience, definitely better. Definitely better.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting, and I want to
more effective at certain things, like it's life feels good.
It's more profound freedom. Like it's like almost you open Pandora's box. You can't go back. Once I've seen this depth of freedom, and again, it's not a belief system. It's just you see how mind functions, and you're like, I can't unsee it. This is clearly the way. It's like just back to our normative state of consciousness, actually, which is not contracted and limited. So, and I want to touch on what you spoke to about being able to inhabit different belief systems. So, and I want to slow down for this because this is so profound, but inherent in a human ego, and when I say ego, I mean a separate sense of self that we unconsciously identify as. And again, it's not conceptual. We feel ourselves to be, quote unquote, me in our bones. It's deep. So that ego that we think that we are and we feel ourselves to be is terrified of groundlessness, because what groundlessness represents is actually equivalent to the death of the ego, the utter annihilation of the ego. And if we are identifying with that solid, separate ego, we experience that identically to physical death. So it is avoided at all costs. And I always say this because it's like once I start talking about emptiness or groundlessness with people that aren't familiar with like Buddhism or certain traditions, you can see people get uncomfortable. They're like looking out the window, or they just like kind of lose interest, and they're like, yeah, anyway. So and it's interesting because what is afraid of groundlessness? Or we could rephrase that: who is afraid of groundlessness? It has to be this illusion of a solid ego, because if everything is groundless by nature, that means the ego has to be groundless too.
And let me add something in here as well.
Yeah.
The worldviews that we hold construct the self, and so they dependently arise, right? So it's like, why am I so afraid of letting go of my, let's say, atheist belief system? Well, it's because by holding on to this belief system, I am actually reifying the self. And to let go of this belief system, I would be forced to confront groundlessness. Which,
again, so the ego is terrified of groundlessness. Ultimately, with a deep understanding of emptiness or just truth in general, you recognize our true nature is groundlessness. What we really are beyond illusion isn't afraid of the void, because it is the void. It's a hilarious kind of like paradox almost. The ego is terrified of what? Ultimate, complete, unsurpassable liberation. That's what it's terrified of, is recognizing our voidness, our voidness, our inherent groundless nature. And I love this quote from Chogyam Trungpa, who's a Tibetan teacher, which is, the bad news is that we're all in free fall without a parachute. So just imagine, you jump out of a plane, oh shit, no parachute. But the good news is that there is no ground. So reality is groundless, void, in entirety. Empty, complete emptiness. So at that point, you don't need a parachute. You don't need to try to hold on to any ground. The freedom, and I would say enlightenment, if that's a word that you're into, nirvana, the kingdom of God, actually is an experience that arises through letting go of the need for ground, of the need for a solid ego, relaxing into the void. And that includes the voidness of death, the voidness of birth, the voidness of self, the voidness of world, voidness of time. And by that definition, space. Recognizing all of this is consciousness. Even time is not inherently existing. At that point, freedom is a good word to start with. You know what I mean?
Profound joy, profound spaciousness.
Bliss on demand. Joy on demand.
So something really interesting here, we actually touched on this in the first podcast, is sometimes if you try to force someone into this realization too fast, it can be really jarring, right? And so I want to take us 360 to what we started with in this episode, jhana. Jhana can, in a way, be like this fertile soil for these insights to emerge. Because when you're in jhana, it feels really good. And then when these insights of like everything is groundless, they're a little bit, they induce less fear in the nervous system, because it's like, I feel pretty good. Every belief system I've ever had is empty and not inherently true. Okay,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But if I don't have access to that profound love and joy and compassion, then it's like, oh shit, like, am I gonna be in a state of like nihilistic emptiness now? And it's like it creates that like need to grasp, right? And the jhana releases the need to grasp at things.
Not just the jhana, but the cultivation of love and kindness and acceptance. And I like what Rob Berbea said about this, where it's almost insane to ask somebody to let go if they don't have a certain reservoir of love. Because it's like, what am I going to let go into? I'm holding on to self. I'm holding on to, let's say, money, success, the goals of the future. I'm holding on to that because parts of the being are impoverished. And it's like, it's almost cruel to ask somebody to let go of that. Instead, we cultivate love internally. Because again, you don't need to look for it outside. It's actually an internal process, and it always has been. So cultivating this reservoir of I'm enough. May I be kind to myself and others. May I be whole just as I am. And may I be loved. over and over, and this reservoir builds. And all of a sudden, because you have this cushion of love, it's like when there's that invitation to let go, the being isn't afraid. It doesn't cling harder. Mm-hmm. It's actually, when you step into deeper states of emptiness, which are deeply related to jhanas, because again, jhanas are states of consciousness that are less fabricated. So you're stepping into progressively more empty experiences. So the being is able to let go more deeply into shunyata, emptiness, through the cultivation of love. And it's so interesting because it's like, it's a feedback loop where when you let go into emptiness, what you find is what? Love. They're deeply interrelated. They're like two sides of the same coin.
And sometimes you try to get into emptiness and it doesn't lead to love. And what does that mean? There's some subtle aversion there still.
Clinging.
Right? And so a lot of times we can trick ourselves. It's like, I'm going to do an anatta practice, which is not me, not mine. Oh, this is not me. This is not mine. This thought is not me. And I've done that, and then it feels really, like, not pleasant at all. And then it's like, oh, wait, there's still some aversion here. In the compassion, in the well-being, it kind of just takes care of that.
So again, with that practice, so anatta is the Pali word for no findable self, one of the 3 marks of existence, and according to Buddhism. And so the practice would be in meditation. You have a thought, you have a feeling, you say, not me, not mine. Because normally we say, oh, this thought's mine. This feeling, it must be mine. But with Buddhism and the understanding of the emptiness of self, we can actually just note, not me, not mine. And with that, again, like you said, if there's any amount of ego present, then it's going to cling to, but it is me and it is mine. And it's like, it's going to actually feel uncomfortable in the being. So that's where metta, aka loving kindness, has this really interesting effect of dissolving. Because, it dissolves the solidity. Because the love leads to emptiness. And then all of a sudden the self that felt so real and was holding on for dear life, it just starts to dissolve. And it's much easier to let go. And what we're pointing to is basically that meditation, as we are talking about it now, is much more of an art than it is like a practice. It's both, right? But knowing when to do just breath-based samatha, when to do metta, love and kindness, when to do not me, not mine. And it's an understanding, and again, sort of felt in the being of what is useful right now. And we have to talk about soulmaking. So we don't have too much time left. So we're gonna start with it.
So what is soulmaking?
So it's a beautiful term. I think even just the term itself, for me, just kind of lit something up in the being. Soulmaking. What is that? So Rob Burbea teaches this. This is a term that has been around for a while, actually. I've heard various teachers, including James Hillman, who I also love, a depth psychologist, who uses this term soulmaking, sort of in a different way. But it's this understanding that we are co-creating experience deeply, unconsciously. And we are feeding certain belief systems unconsciously that limit experience and that actually induce suffering and, for instance, make us feel alone, separate, all that. So with what we were just talking about, the recognition of emptiness and the profundity of emptiness, how not just self is empty, not just the world, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Recognizing they're co-created through the mind. So when we recognize this, we're deeply free. And this is traditional Buddha Dharma, at least the Hinayana path, which is just let go of everything and, solidity fades, suffering fades, and you're free. So emptiness is almost just step 1. Then once you're deeply free, the question becomes, what do I want? When suffering becomes extremely manageable, which if you follow this path of really, I would say, calming the mind and also practicing skillful ways of seeing, suffering gets very, very low. And then the question is, what do I want? And this is what is so profound about what Rob Burbea taught, which is actually, if you look at your life and you're being really honest, do you just want to end suffering? Is that really all that you want? If you're being really honest, is that all that you want? And for me, something in my being lit up because I was like, no, That's not all I want. Because looking back at my life, what I crave is profundity, deep meaning, connection to myself, to others, to God, deep transcendence. I want enchantment. I want a world dripping with magic because it feels good. It feels right. This cold, flat, materialistic world that we've been conditioned into believing is just quote unquote how things are is torturing us. And hearing Rob say that, I was like, yes, yes, yes. So then the question becomes, what ways of looking do we need to entertain that construct the fertile soil to have experiences of the moments that make life worth living? Profundity, depth, beauty, senses of sacredness. You don't just arrive at those experiences. Recognizing they're co-created. And I can give an example of how I've used soulmaking in my life, but do you want me to do that now, or do you want to
go for it? Yeah.
Okay. So I remember I was on a hike, and for me it's very easy to sink into these very ensouled states in the natural world. There's naturally eros for nature, especially here in the mountains in Colorado, where it's just so fucking beautiful, and I'm like, God, give me more of this. And then you introduce mushrooms, psychedelics, LSD, whatever, DMT. Of course, I mean, for sure, forever. Shout out mushrooms. But then, so in these altered states of consciousness where perception gets very fluid, and you're in this very beautiful place. I remember I did like a 25-mile run early last spring, right after this breakup. This is such a beautiful story. I love it. And I was like absolutely fucking exhausted. I did not bring enough food. I'm like at the end of this loop. After getting hailed on, I have a tank top and shorts. And I'm hiding under this tree, and I'm like 15 miles out. And I'm like, I hope this stops, because I'm going to die out here. I have no layers, and it's like hailing to the point where there's like hail rivers going through the trail. So I'm like, this kind of is sketchy. Luckily, the storm passed. And I'm just walking. I'm exhausted. Off the mushrooms, and I remember first my ex, my most recent breakup. And just all of a sudden, all the emotions opened up. And it was like all the things I wish I could say to her that I wish were different. Just like saying I'm sorry and being alone and being able to just... I remember I was like, now's the time. It felt like there was like a purging coming through me. Almost like the knowing in your body of like, I have to vomit. But with just bawling my eyes out. It was like, oh, here it is. And I just like, I took a knee next to this log and just started sobbing and saying like, I'm sorry. I wish it could have been different. Just this raw burst of pure emotion to the point where like I'm dripping tears, snot, spit, everything. And I'm just wailing. And I can hear the echoes of myself crying off the canyons. Also with just this rolling thunder in the background. And I was like, what an epic setting to finally release these demons, you know? And so I have this crazy cry sesh, this just raw release of emotion. And then I'm walking, because again, I can't run because I didn't bring enough food, so I was kind of fucked. And the sun comes out, and I'm in this like grove of aspens, and I look at the sun, I turn around right as it comes out, and I like, it's evening, so I could like connect right with the sun and look at it. And I'm looking at it through the trees, and something in my being just stops. And I just start speaking and saying like, thank you. I'm yours. Whatever you want from me, let me know. And something was speaking back. Something real. I could feel it in my heart, and I could feel the tears coming again. And it's hard to describe this to people who have a certain belief system. Because when I'm saying, again, I'm yours, let your will move through me. And again, I'm speaking this organically to something. What is it? Can't really say. Something. And the resonances in my body, the profundity of, I just like sat down and stared, and it's just like everything I ever wanted in that moment. Bliss, gratitude. It's like just thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, all wrapped up into moments. And it's so deep, so profound. And there's a certain conceptual framework that was necessary to entertain for that experience to take place. And again, those kinds of experiences are what make my life worth living.
Did you surrender and then that image came up? Was there the intention of the image? was the image clear, or was it just like a felt sense?
It was almost like, again, so I'm like walking through the trees. It's like after this storm, and the sun comes out, and I'm in this grove of aspens, and I literally turn around, and I look at the sun, and it's like hitting me in the eyes, and I stop, and it was just organic. It's just so beautiful. Something in me was just like, thank you. And then just like devotion, I'm yours. Like, let me know. What do you want me to do? And it's just like, give me courage, give me strength. I hope that you can see through me, let just beautiful, spontaneous words being uttered. Mm-hmm. And the depth and the profundity of that experience. I will say, again, I don't like to put it into words. I don't like to put it in a box. But you can call it talking to God. Because in a sense, what is God? Is it separate from your mind? Because in a sense, with the Buddhist understanding of emptiness, it never could be. Nothing could be. So the co-created experience of God, where God is not something you touch into, it's co-created. So I am creating and discovering. I get chills, like profound divinity. And that nourishes the soul in a way that's hard to describe.
It seems like there's a way in which like prayer is more of like a relationship where you're like praying to and receiving as opposed to a oneness. I'm wondering if this imaginal is almost like you're bringing some degree of separation so that you can get the result of being in relationship with the thing that ultimately you are not separate from.
Exactly.
But the feeling of being in relationship to that thing is different than being the thing and merging with it.
This is crazy. And again, I don't hear anybody speaking like this. But okay, so we can fabricate an experience of a dualistic experience of divinity where I am not God, God is elsewhere. And the benefit of that is that I can have a relationship to God. Where in non-duality, in the Dzogchen tradition where everything merges into oneness, I can't have a relationship to God because I am God. Same deal. So there's a benefit and drawbacks to both of those fabricated, empty experiences of divinity. And again, recognizing that both of those experiences, the non-dual and the dualistic experience of divinity and God, are equally made up. And that's where we have the power to pick and choose at different times. When I separate myself from God and I'm in the mountains talking to God, I have the potential to receive love, to receive guidance, to receive gifts from the imaginal other, recognizing they're an imagined experience. And that's the thing. People, like someone hit me up yesterday. People always do this on Instagram. I'm like, I was sent to connect you with God. Like, you need to accept him into your life. And I'm like, me and God are hella tight. What are you talking about? But I'm like, but what happens for those people who are all about Christ and just accept Christ into your life is they've created an imaginal other that is feeding their soul with love and nourishment and acceptance and kindness. And it feels so good. They're like, this has to be real. Actually, due to clinging, which is trippy. But like, again, so we can create the imaginal divine other that then nourishes the separate being in a very real way. But that's not the objective truth, no matter how good it feels.
So I want to add something here because you're making me realize some stuff.
Let's go.
I noticed even in saying that like there's this God as oneness, which I was still kind of biasing towards, right? And then I'm like, okay, the dualistic is slightly less real because I'm fabricating a separation. But you could say even the oneness itself is an image that like my mind is kind of like imparting on the experience of this like one fabric. And it's like even that is my mind is doing something, right? It is creating this single fabric of existence, which is equally as unreal as God is separate from me.
Bro, this is crazy as fuck. And that's the thing. People, especially like non-dual practitioners, are so hooked to like the true ultimate reality is non-duality. And I'm like, you're fabricating that. You're fabricating that. You don't see it, but you are. And yes, it feels really good and really right. And in a deep sense, you could say it's really deeply true. But experientially, equally as true for those that fabricate the dualistic experience of God, where God is separate from me. I am not that.
Just going to add a question in or a thought.
Yeah.
I have this sense, it's not a fully formed idea yet, but to cling onto non-dualism as the ultimate truth, it basically stops love from flowing into dualistic relationships. And so ultimately, could we say that the goal is like to feel just the greatest degree of love for all perspectives? And if someone has a dualistic conception of God, if I'm clinging to non-dualism, it's almost like I can't fully enter into that.
Exactly.
Is that how you view it? Or
beautiful. So yeah, so the clinging to God is either non-dual or God is dualistic. Any clinging present is going to contract, cause suffering, cause a sense of solidity, and limit the expressions of perception and consciousness. So the freedom is, again, love it all. Even emptiness as a view. If we cling to that, we close ourselves off from a very real experience of, say, a dualistic experience of God or a non-dualistic experience of God. So the freedom
is self.
Yeah, exactly. So the freedom comes through loving all of it. Loving all of it to death, where the solidity fades and you're free to splash around in the void, which is our God-given inheritance when we're not living in the Buddhist word to be deluded existences, where we are solidifying reality and saying, this is just how things are, forgetting we are solidifying it. And so the freedom is, again, to have the ability to taste all of these flavors of connection to the imaginal other, the great beyond, God, spirit, all of it. And recognizing we are actively co-creating those experiences. And so it's, in my mind, just so profound to have stepped out to that degree where you look back at how the mind is constructing all of this. And what allows for us to have a very real experience of, say, again, God is elsewhere. And, this is pretty universal in monotheistic religions. I'm not God. God's somewhere else. Duh. So, again, that's a conditioned narrative belief system where, and this is what we're calling a dualistic experience of God. There's a beauty in that, because through the two-ness, the separation, I can give love to God. God can give love to me. Not just love, but inspiration, strength, courage, clarity, kindness. So we can give and receive from the imaginal other. Whereas in the non-dual perspective, there's like a ability to sense this human form, quote unquote human form, as divine, as theophany, aka an expression of God, where I'm not separate at all from the source of creation. I am the source of creation right now. And that is a perception that also starts to enchant self, where what I'm experiencing right now, who is speaking into this microphone right now, is the source of creation. And that's a very real.
How could it not be?
How could it not be? Right. But and this is the ultimate freedom, not clinging to that view, but picking it up and putting it down. And that's the radicality of the teachings of Rob Burbea. Shout out the GOAT, Rob Burbea, for creating, having this creative genius, literally creative genius. I would say, shifted the world permanently. And I'm going to say, Rob, wherever you're at right now, your work is just starting. Just starting. I'm getting chills saying that. R.I.P. So, again, picking up views and putting them down when they don't serve us. So when I was in the mountains talking to God, that was a view that I was picking up of the imaginal other. The divine is elsewhere. But like I just said 2 seconds ago, who is speaking into the microphone? The source of creation. How can I be separate from the divine and also be the divine? When we're able to pick up and put down views at will, we have this meta level of freedom to construct any experience and not be confined in them. Moment to moment, I can radically shift the world that I am inhabiting, the self that I am inhabiting. And
so, let me riff on this for a bit. No, this is so good, dude.
I can't believe this is recorded. I'm stoked.
I can't believe it. So one definition of God in my lens is infinite creativity, infinite creative intelligence, right? And so what does that mean? It means we can also inhabit that. And that doesn't necessarily mean, I see a lot of nuance here, and I want to like try to define the nuance. And I understand what you're saying, but I want to spell it out a little bit more.
Please.
So, okay, I am consciousness, God, like theophany, you know, God is speaking through me. Amazing perspective to pick up at times. And it's in to pinpoint it, it's like the idea is to be so creatively intelligent that you are picking up and putting things down dependent on the context and the situation. And so there is never a formula for which perspective to pick up and which perspective to put down at any given time. It's always like going to be creatively bursting out of whatever this entirely unique context is. Like this context, you and I speaking right now, has never happened in all of existence and will never happen again, right? And so therefore, there is no formula for me to know which perspective to pick up right now, right? And so I want to give an example. Let's say you're in a relationship with Bae, right? And you're like, and she's getting mad, and you're like, Bae, all is one. We're God. Just chill out, you know. And she's gonna be like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You don't
love me, you piece of shit."
Right? And so it's like in that situation, you want to pick up a self. You want to pick up holding the perspective that everything is one and empty, and you know that's not wise at all, exactly. Right? And so it's like, okay, you're in a situation. Maybe someone's really angry at you. There's a certain perspective to hold that is wise in relationship to that. Yeah. And you probably won't know what it is until you're in that moment. In the same way, we are both kind of playing we're playing with different ways of seeing right now, which if we go out and hit the gym, we're going to take a different perspective. If we go out and, you know, I don't know, like the perspectives change in every single moment, and you never really know. It's constantly creatively intelligent.
So beautiful. You never know what's going to come through. And there's a beautiful saying in Zen where the student asks the teacher, "What's a lifetime of practice give you?" And the teacher just says the proper response. So again, if I'm in an argument with Bae and I'm just like, Bae, we're all one, that's not going to turn out very well. We need to honor the self. Even though it's a fabrication, we need to honor it, and we need to nourish it, and we need to take care of it.
It's like, I see you.
Exactly.
As a self in the ways that you're suffering.
And what we'll end on is this understanding that perception is an art. It's poetry. And at any moment, we need to know how to shift perception skillfully to get what we want. And sometimes being in the self is necessary. We can't fade into non-duality all the time. So,
in the less that we're afraid, the more that we're loving, the easier it is to shift to the context.
So, bottom line of all the crazy shit we just said, love more. Love more. Ethan, my man, thank you so much. That was insane. An epic conversation. There will be more.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, thank you all for watching.